All right, we're live. Welcome
Awesome.
to
Hey.
Service Academy. I'm Flynn. I'm joined by Regina Scott. Okay, she's that way on my screen. I don't know where she is on
Yeah.
yours. But
Same.
yeah, so I'm joined by Regina Scott, who is an Argo CD maintainer. I'm a tech evangelist with Linkerd. Everybody knows that already, probably. We're going to be talking today about Argo CD and the Gateway API and Linkerd. Actually, I guess it's Argo and Linkerd and the Gateway API. We will, as usual, take a couple of minutes just to make sure there are no stragglers. Let's see. Those of you who are watching, if you want to chime in and say where you are, that's always entertaining. I'm outside of Boston in the United States, not the one in England. Um,
I'm also an hour outside of
I was going to say
Boston.
you're much further outside of Boston than I am. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to
Uh,
be in Boston up until a couple months ago, and then I moved out to the rural Western Massachusetts area. So,
well,
yeah.
we'll have to drag you back into the Boston area to at least wave at each other or something.
Okay.
Uh, Bangalore wins for furthest away at the moment. Rochester, New York. I've been to Rochester, New York. I mean, it was decades ago, but I've been there. Um, Catherine, as always, is here from Washington, D.C. Hi, Catherine. St. Louis.
Ooh. Oh,
Yeah.
Poland. Cool.
Poland. Nice. I think Bangalore still wins for further away, though, but still pretty cool. London. Yeah, Mate
Ooh,
is always in
London.
London.
I'll be in London next week.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my God, Newcastle upon Tyne. I
that's
have
cool.
literally never seen anybody from there on this one before. And yes, I know where that is.
I was there earlier this year,
What were you
actually.
doing there?
My boyfriend is from the UK, so
That would do it.
London and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Argentina, Bentonville, Arkansas, aka the town of Walmart. Um,
Ooh,
yeah,
Argentina, that's so
I know.
fun.
I see on Slack Bangkok in Egypt. Always cool. All right. We can do this for another minute or so, I think. Sacramento. I've definitely spent time in Sacramento. I used to live in the Bay Area. Somebody on Slack saying that he grew
Oh,
up in
Greenfield.
Greenfield.
Oh, I know Greenfield.
I am not going
Great.
to lie. I do not know Greenfield.
Very cute. Love it.
Nice. I've been to Worcester a few times. There's,
Worcester's not even Western Mass.
yeah, I know. I was going to say beyond that, most of my experience with Western Mass is on the pike between Boston and Albany and going, oh, look, it's Springfield. Oh, look, it's West Springfield. Or,
Yeah.
sometimes, oh, look, it's Sturbridge on the way to New York City.
Yep.
Uh, those of you who are not from the Boston area have probably heard of none of these names, and that is okay. All right. I think we can go ahead and get started, though. Looks like we definitely have some folks here. So let's go ahead and bring the slides up. I lied. It is Argo and the Gateway API and Linkerd, but I no longer know why we did that order. Interesting. So let's go ahead and get into this a little bit. There we go. Like I said, I am Flynn. She's Regina. You have a much better picture than I do, Regina. I'm not going to lie.
I don't think I do. It's very old. My hair's not pink anymore.
Whatever. On the agenda for today, we're going to do a quick intro to Argo and CD in general. We're going to do a very quick intro to Linkerd because probably people on this one have at least a little bit of a sense of Linkerd. We're going to talk about how Linkerd and Argo work together, and then we're going to dive into the hands-on workshop. As you will see on the Chiron below, you can join the workshops channel on the Linkerd community Slack. That is the best way to ask questions. Whatever you're watching this on, you can probably put stuff in the chat there and we'll see it. But the nice thing about putting them in Slack is that we have Linkerd maintainer Mate standing by to hopefully be able to answer questions and help out and things like that. And so you will probably get faster responses over there. If you want to follow along with the workshop, which would be cool, there's a lot of stuff you need for this one, actually. So all of these are there, or all of these are things you're going to need. You will need to fork the Argo Linkerd demo as opposed to just like looking at it. You will need kube control, Linkerd, the step command, Argo CD, the kube control Argo Rollouts plugin, and BAT if you want to follow along exactly with what we're doing here. If you just clone the thing and then try to run the README with Demosh, then it will actually go through and make sure you have all of these things and tell you how to get them if you don't. So that might be a simple way of doing that. Okay, quick words from our sponsors. Over at Buoyant, we have a forum now. Please go join the forum. It's really nice because we can search questions and things like that, and it's a little bit easier than putting things in Slack and having them vanish after a couple of months. We also have the fundamentals of the service mesh online course at learn.buoyant.io. And as always, you can go and ping William Morgan on the Linkerd Slack if you are interested in Linkerd Enterprise, which is pretty cool if you're an enterprise person. With that out of the way, Argo, and now Regina will talk and I will not.
Awesome, cool. So firstly, we're going to do a little brief intro to continuous deployment and progressive delivery. So starting off with continuous deployment, it's the concept of deploying frequent and small software changes, such as UI enhancements, bug fixes, and feature improvements, and also includes testing, staging, deployment of that code. It's typically what happens after code has gone through versioning and automated building through a CI pipeline. Some of the most popular tools on the market today for CD include Jenkins, GitLab, GitHub Action. Oh, sorry, I think I meant CI. Yeah, sorry, CI. Include Jenkins, GitLab, GitHub Actions, and Circle CI, and Travis CI, but there's many others. They also do CD, some CD too. And some of the challenges of CD include the need to set up external tooling for kubectl or Helm. They often also have to be configured with credentials to access your Kubernetes cluster. And with that, there are security challenges for storing your cluster credentials outside of the cluster. And also, once things are updated by CD, there's really often no visibility of deployment status, which is why Argo CD is awesome, because there is. So
one of the many reasons.
Many reasons. We'll go over more after. So next, for progressive delivery. So progressive delivery is the concept of releasing updates of a product in a controlled and gradual manner. That's in order to reduce any potential negative impacts of the update. So usually this is done in a very automated way and uses metric analysis to drive that promotion or rollback of updates. There are a couple different progressive delivery deployment strategies. So one of these is a rolling update, which slowly scales up a new version and scales down an old version to maintain the overall count of the application. And this is usually the default strategy with deployment objects. There's a recreate deployments that delete the old version before bringing up the new version. So as a result, there's never two versions running at the same time. And this also means that there's no downtime during, there is downtime during the deployment.
That doesn't sound very progressive to me. No. I'm not gonna lie.
Not really. It's not my favorite. There is blue-green. You may also hear this called red-black. This strategy has both old and new versions running at the same time, but the old one receives, but only the old one receives any traffic while developers run tests against the new version. And then once people are satisfied, then the traffic will get switched to the new version. The canary deployment strategy is what we'll be using today for our demo. And with this strategy, only a subset of users are exposed to the new version, while everyone else gets the old version. And if everything goes well, then that subset of new users gets gradually increased until eventually the new version completely replaces the old version. So what is Argo? When you hear Argo,
what is Argo?
what is Argo?
Always
We're going to learn. So when you hear Argo, you might think it's all one thing, but really Argo is a parent organization that houses 4 main projects and then plus some sub-projects under Argo Proj Labs. And they can all be used as standalone, or you can combine them. So Argo Workflows was the original Argo project, and it's a Kubernetes native workflow engine for orchestrating parallel jobs as a Kubernetes CRD. It uses multi-step workflows as a sequence of tasks or to capture the dependencies between tasks. And most people use Argo workflows for infrastructure automation, data processing, CI/CD, and machine learning, which is cool. Argo CD is one of the projects we're obviously going to be using today, and I'll say more about it on the next slide. But for now, all you need to know is that it's a declarative continuous delivery tool for Kubernetes. Argo Rollouts is the other Argo project we'll be using today. And again, I won't say too much about it here, but it's a progressive delivery controller for Kubernetes. And then to round out the 4 main projects, we have Argo Events, which is an event-driven workflow automation framework for Kubernetes. So with Argo workflows, you can trigger, lost my place.
With Argo Events?
Yes, with Argo Events.
Sorry, I confused the world by accidentally bumping my mouse.
Yeah, that's okay. Don't worry about it. So with Argo Events, you can trigger different actions on over 20 different events that can happen either inside or outside your cluster, with lots of different ways to customize and handle that behavior. And then Argo Proj Labs houses a lot of other small projects that are still mostly under development, but a lot of them are pretty well trusted and still used in production environments. Some of them are the Argo CD operator, which is another one that I work on, and Argo CD autopilot and Argo CD image updater.
So do y'all find mostly that, I'm not entirely sure how to ask this question. Are these projects kind of all similarly common, or do you find like Argo CD gets used the most and then the other ones less, or, what do y'all see from that side?
I think CD and rollouts and workflows is also really popular, but I think CD and rollouts are 2 big ones.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Certainly we hear a lot about CD and rollouts from the Linkerd side.
So onto Argo CD. So as I just mentioned, Argo CD is a Kubernetes deployment tool based on GitOps principles. As for GitOps principles, the main one is just being that Git is everyone's source of truth. So basically whatever is checked into your Git repository should be what everyone is using and contributing to. It should be immutable in the sense that all changes have to go through a PR review process and merge before becoming part of that truth. And so it should be versioned and have complete version history, which Git provides us. Argo CD is deployed within your Kubernetes cluster, unlike a lot of other CD tools, which has some major benefits I'll talk about in the next slide. With Argo CD, all of your manifests are stored in Git, and they can just be written as plain YAML or JSON files, or they can be Helm charts or customized applications or JSONet files. And we also provide support for any other custom config management tool added as a plugin. So lots of options there. When there are changes detected in the Git manifest repo you have, Argo CD is going to pull those changes and deploy the desired application states to the environment that you specify in your cluster. And Argo CD can integrate with a lot of different CI tools, such as GitHub Actions or Jenkins, which are typically the most popular ones. So in the diagram we have here, a developer or a DevOps engineer will make some changes in their Git repos. In some cases, people will put their application code and their config code or Kubernetes manifests in the same repo. We will actually be doing that today just for simplicity, but for real life use cases, it is better to have a separation between them. For instance, you wouldn't want to trigger an entire CI pipeline build if you want to just do something like bump the number of replicas. So
Although I've seen that happen a lot.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people do it, but it's more of a best practice to separate them. Yeah. Also, if everything is stored in the same repo where people who work on arguably pretty different things have all the same repo permissions, you wouldn't want someone accidentally pushing something either intentionally or unintentionally to production in a worst case scenario.
Which I've also seen happen.
Yeah, it's definitely worst case. Hopefully not an intentional, but
of course I've never done that myself. You understand.
Yeah, so it's just better to have that separation between them. And then also having that separation gives you a much cleaner Git history. So application changes and config changes aren't all mixed together. You can easily see what's happening. Like I mentioned, ours is combined, but just know that it's better not to do that.
There's actually a lot of stuff that we're going to do today that we're doing because this is a demo, and we will call out where those are, but you should recognize that this particular thing, we are doing sort of the whirlwind overview demo tour, as opposed to digging deep into exactly how you should do this in production. We will probably be doing another one of these where we do dig into exactly how you do this in production. Yeah. And, things will look different, just so you know. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah. So in our diagram here, someone, either DevOps or a developer, pushes their code to their Git source repo. On the upper part of the diagram, it's going to go through their CI pipeline and push a new image to whatever registry they use, either Docker Hub or Quay. And then on the lower side of this flowchart is the CD side of things. So from that same Git repo, Argo CD is deployed inside your Kubernetes cluster, and it's watching that Git repo, and it will pull any changes it sees and apply them to the cluster in whatever environment you specify. So prod, test, dev. And if you wanted to more deeply connect your CI with Argo CD, you could also have the images from that image registry above be applied to the cluster instead.
Makes sense so far.
Yeah. So
this is a good opportunity also to remind folks that, if you have questions, then put them in the chat wherever you happen to be, or in the Linkerd Slack workshops channel, and we'll get to them as soon as we can, but don't be shy about tossing the questions in as soon as you have them.
Yeah. So next, some benefits of Argo CD. So what makes it really special? For one, having your entire Kubernetes configuration stored as code in Git, and then just being able to use that is extremely useful. As I mentioned before, everything is versioned and organized, as opposed to just having it all kept locally, which can be a mess and make sharing changes pretty impossible.
Or even understanding changes, or
right.
knowing which changes are supposed to be there.
If you're doing this, I don't know how you live. Everything should be Git.
I know how you live. You live with a lot of stress and lost sleep is how you live.
So Argo CD makes it really, really easy to roll back changes to a previous state if something goes wrong in this case, because everything is versioned. And because everything is stored in Git, it isn't going anywhere, and it's always easily accessible all times of day. So if for some reason your cluster goes down or starts having some issues, all you need to do is start up another cluster and then apply the same config files, and Argo CD will sync them all to your new cluster in exactly the same way. And it'll be like you never lost your cluster at all.
That right there is honestly
Yeah.
pretty much worth the price of admission for GitOps. And
Yeah.
This is also a thing that I have actually seen happen where the production environment suddenly catches on fire, and then sometimes this can be a minor annoyance and sometimes it's an existential disaster. So
Yeah. And another great thing about Argo CD is that it gives you a place where everyone who interacts with the configuration will use the same singular interface when interacting or updating the cluster. Everyone's interacting with the same Argo CD instance, or instances in some cases if you choose. You can have more than one, but we'll just have one for this demo. So when one person makes a change, that change is instantly visible to everyone else. And one of the best things about Argo CD is the UI it provides. So it makes it really easy to see what's happening, if there are any issues, and particularly the history of changes that have been made. Argo CD, as we said, compares the desired state, which is what you have in Git, to the actual state of your cluster, and it can automatically apply those changes. So you can push to Git and just know Argo CD will apply those changes, or you can change that setting to only have it sync manually when you tell it to. So you can change the settings. It's very configurable to what you're comfortable with.
a question that's come up a couple of times on that one, which is always interesting to me, but we usually get the question of, oh, is there a way that you can have it so that if you change something on the cluster, then it automatically flows backwards to GitHub? And the answer is pretty much always, no, you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But the question
not the
comes up
GitOps
multiple
way.
times. Yeah, it's not the GitOps way. You really do not want that. If
Yeah.
you want to change something in the cluster, change it in Git. Let Git be the source of truth, and then let it flow through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So going on, like I mentioned before, Argo CD runs within your Kubernetes cluster. And this is really great because it means you don't have to worry about keeping any cluster credentials outside of your cluster. Everything is internal and thus provides a lot of additional security advantages. And lastly, just one Argo CD instance in one cluster can actually manage other clusters as well. So if you have multiple clusters, you actually don't have to have multiple Argo CD instances. You can just tell the Argo CD instance running in one cluster, hey, I have this other cluster over here, and here's the info for it. And please do the stuff that I'm telling you to do for this one for all of these ones too. So it's really cool functionality.
Cool. One of the things that I also noticed when we were going over the demo was that, at least the way we were using GitHub, we did not need to provide Argo with a GitHub token or anything like that. It just used public access, which I kind of liked. It was nice to not have to worry about that additional step.
Yeah. There is one question in Slack. Does Argo diff the commit SHAs? Yes, it does. And you can actually see like basically the same in GitHub when you make a pull request, like what it was before, what it was after the proposed changes, what's been deleted and added. And Argo CD does that exactly within the UI too. So yeah,
Which is cool.
It diffs the commit SHAs for you. You can see exactly what's changed. Okay, next we're going on to Argo Rollouts. So we talked a little about progressive delivery earlier, and this is a progressive delivery controller for Kubernetes. It can integrate with service meshes and ingress controllers to shape traffic, and it can do this using Gateway API, which is what we're going to be using today. Argo Rollouts uses metrics analysis to determine what steps it takes next to promote or roll back updates, and it does this all in a very predetermined, automated way. So in this diagram, on the left, we have a request coming in to upgrade to V2 of an application. And this is a canary deployment strategy. So one of the steps is that it's increasing the weight to, say, give 25% of the users this new version. Once it does that, it's going to pause the update, collect all the metrics on it, and then analyze those metrics. And if everything's deemed acceptable, then it's going to increase again, another 25%. And then again, pause, collect and analyze the metrics, and then so on until eventually it reaches 100%. And the old version is entirely phased out. And if those metrics are analyzed and determined that they don't pass, there's some issue that arises, then it's going to roll back and not progress any further.
And you can change you get to configure the steps and the weights and all that. So
right. And
it's not just 25, 50, 75.
Yes, we'll show you after. You can have as many steps as you want. You can do it in increments of basically
1%.
any integer. Yeah. So awesome. So that is a rundown of Argo and progressive deployment or delivery and continuous deployment.
Okay. And now I think we get to talk a little bit about Linkerd, or maybe we have to talk a little bit about Linkerd, depending on your point of view. So Linkerd is a service mesh, which probably everybody knows. Specifically, a service mesh is an infrastructure layer providing security, reliability, and observability down at the platform level underneath the application so that it's uniform across the entire application. And in Linkerd's case, you don't have to change anything in your application itself. It can be owned by a completely different team than the people who are working on the application. You can actually use Linkerd all the way down to tiny startups, in which case you may have the same people doing everything, but it's still different roles, and you can separate those concerns later as it becomes relevant. Like most meshes, Linkerd does this by sticking user space proxies next to each of your application pods. This is, in our case, represented by Linky the lobster. And this is the service mesh data plane, so-called because it's the one that's slinging all your application data around. There is also a control plane, which is basically a set of processes that manage the data plane. We're really not going to talk much about the control plane here. The important thing about Linkerd's control plane is that it both manages all of the data plane proxies and such, but it also provides a way that you can go and do central metrics and analysis and observation to be able to see what's going on everywhere in your application all at the same time. Reasons to use Linkerd. Why Linkerd is awesome. It is lightweight, it is fast, it is very secure. All the proxies are written in Rust, so we don't have to worry about this huge class of security problems in C and C++. It is actually the first service mesh to graduate from the CNCF. We did that, I want to say a couple of years ago. No. Yeah, I think it was a couple of years ago, maybe more. And Linkerd is also the only mesh to really focus on operational simplicity. Like I said earlier, you can actually use Linkerd in a 4-person startup and get benefit out of it, and you can use it in a 5,000-person enterprise and get benefit out of it, because one of the goals of Linkerd is to make it so that you don't have to spend a lot of time, energy, and staffing on managing the complexity of the mesh. The mesh is supposed to make your life less complex, not more complex. Reasons to use Linkerd with Argo. Okay, so we mentioned earlier, Argo Rollouts can use the Gateway API as HTTP routes to shape traffic between the canary and the stable version and things like that during a rollout. Linkerd supports the Gateway API for routing, which means that you can pretty much just toss the two of them into the same cluster, not really do anything else, and let Argo CD seamlessly manage rollouts of various microservices anywhere in the call graph for your entire application, which is very different from if you're using the Ingress controller to control these rollouts, because if you're doing that, you only get to do the microservices right at the edge of the call graph. With the service mesh, you can do it anywhere in the call graph. We are, in fact, going to be demoing doing canaries of something that's 2 or 3 layers deep, depending on how you count. But it's definitely in a place where the Ingress controller could do absolutely nothing, but the service meshes can handle it just fine. So, the demo architecture. I'm going to remind everybody once again, questions can go either in your platform's chat or into the Slack channel. I realized that was a very, very quick intro to Linkerd. So if you have questions, now's the time. The demo architecture is one that we've used in actually a lot of our other service mesh academies. We will be using the Faces demo, where we have a GUI, which is a single page web app, talking to a workload called face, which talks in turn to smiley and color. The point of the smiley workload is that it is supposed to return smiley faces to you. The color workload should be returning the color green. The face workload will compose those two together and then hand them back to the GUI. So if all goes well, we should see this nice little grid of grinning faces on green backgrounds. Some of you will have seen other demos with the face demo where we deliberately made the faces not look a lot like this, but for this time, we're actually going to let the demo succeed, and we really should see a grid of grinning faces on green backgrounds. We're going to be using Emissary as the ingress controller. We are going to be using Linkerd to manage all the traffic, and we are going to be using Argo to manage everything in the cluster, pretty much. Argo is not really managing itself, I'm not going to lie. Later on, as we get to the rollouts bit, we'll basically let Argo change our color workload into a color stable and color canary. And the first thing we will do, I just realized this slide is out of date from the demo. The first thing we will do is have stable returning green, and then we will have the canary returning purple, not blue. It doesn't matter. It's just a different color.
If you're colorblind, you won't even
know.
know.
It's funny. I have thought at various points that I should really change the colors in the faces demo so that people who are red-green colorblind can see it. And that turns out to be really hard to find colors that will work. I'm not really sure how to do that. Yeah. But yeah, it's possible that if you're colorblind, then purple and blue actually might look the same, come to think of it. All right, well, good future topic of expansion. Question from chat: can you use Linkerd to connect services on Kubernetes to services on VMs? Hold that thought for a little while, because at KubeCon we're going to be talking a little. Actually, at Cloud Native Rejects before KubeCon, we're going to be talking a little bit about some stuff like that. But the short version is we are currently running Linkerd 2.14. Linkerd 2.14 sadly cannot do that. Abo says blue and orange for maximum color blindness support. All right, well, excellent. I shall see if I can change that. All right. Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't actually show that. Argo is also going to be managing manage traffic shifting between our stable color service and our canary color service. Okay. Now is the point where we find out if the demo gods are smiling gods. So I have a Kubernetes cluster running. Specifically, I have a K3D cluster running. The only weird thing about my K3D cluster is that I've turned off the metrics. I think I turned off traffic and metrics because we don't really need them. And I also let my Kubernetes cluster mirror the load balancer port for Emissary all the way through to my Mac, so that we don't have to do port forwards to talk to the faces demo. If you have already forked the repo, like you should have, then you will find a create cluster.sh script that is what I ran to create the cluster. So hopefully, oh good, we can run Linkerd on this cluster. That always makes me feel better. And now, Regina, you want to walk us through installing Argo CD?
Sure. So first off, we're going to create the Argo CD namespace. And then we're going to install Argo CD itself, as well as the services and application resources for it.
And all of this goes into the Argo CD namespace, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. While we're doing that, is there a general guideline, asks someone on Slack, that can be guideline checklist can be referred to for those looking to form multi-cluster mesh where Linkerd is also being managed by Argo CD? Not yet, but we should make a note of that and have that for December, because that would be cool.
A good note.
Yeah. Okay. Next thing we're going to do.
So next we're going to get the status for deploy and stateful sets.
Just to make sure that everything is working.
It does take a second sometimes. There's a lot of stuff to install.
Yeah, we burned that second answering the question, so that was good time.
And then you're going to port forward to access the Argo CD UI.
Okay.
And it should be running on localhost 8080.
And the way we have set this up, it will give you scary warnings about TLS because we haven't bothered to do anything with TLS. Do you remember when I said this was a demo setup? This is a demo setup. So I'm going to click past the scary warnings and, oh, look, it's the Argo dashboard.
So to log in, you're first going to get the initial password and you're going to log in with admin. So you're going to copy that password and then go back to the UI and username admin and use the initial password. And just a quick note that this password is really meant to just be used initially. Obviously for the demo, we're just going to use it for here and not change it. But it's really recommended that you delete the Argo CD initial admin secret from that namespace once you've changed the password, just for security reasons.
Can you, after you change the password, could you still use the password in the initial admin secret to get in?
Well, the password, I don't know. I've tried that before.
I might have to try
probably
that
if you haven't deleted it, maybe, or maybe if you've changed it now, so it is different.
Well, the moral of the story is definitely delete the thing when you're done, right?
Yes, definitely change it and then delete it.
Yeah. So, and then next we have to authenticate the CLI. And this is actually getting the same password that initial password just spat out, right?
Yep.
All right. So hopefully, oh, good. We're logged in successfully and that worked. Always a good sign. Okay. This bit is actually Linkerd installation. Once again, this is a demo setup. So in the real world, we would set this up with Vault and Cert Manager and, all that fancy stuff. In our current demo setup, especially because we're already like 40 minutes into this, then we're just going to go through and use the step command to create the certificates that Linkerd needs, and then just use that, right? And like I said, I expect we're going to come back and actually show the real world setup with all of this stuff, and that will be much more involved. Create the Linkerd namespace that Linkerd wants. And now, Regina, you can talk us through what exactly is Argo doing when we're doing this repo add and such.
Yeah, so Argo CD has a list of repos that it will connect to and watch. If it's a public repository, you don't necessarily need to do this stuff. It's good practice too. But for instance, if it was a private GitHub repository or GitLab repository, again, private, then you could give it credentials and to access that repo there. For here, we're just doing repo add and then giving it the Helm charts for Linkerd and the staple version. So it's adding that so it can easily watch it. And then we're creating the actual applications here for the Linkerd CRDs. So they're going to be stored as an application in Argo CD. Even though they're not necessarily like applications, they're just resources.
And in fact, we see the application tile in the dashboard. Always nice. Right. The astute observer will have noticed that we are running Argo CD app create rather than sticking these things in Git and having, doing the full GitOps thing. Part of the point here is that we wanted to show that there are a couple of different ways you can do things with Argo CD. And even if you do not have these things fully stored in Git so that you can say you're doing certified GitOps or whatever, then you still get benefit from having Argo manage everything after you have created the applications. It's also a nice pathway, as we'll show, to being able to put these things in Git. This is fundamentally the same command we did last time. It just looks like more of a mess because we have to also add these additional Helm arguments for Linkerd's certificates.
So now going back to the UI, we should have like 2 applications there for our control plane and Linkerd CRDs.
Yep.
And we just have to sync them.
Which we will show here from the CLI.
Yeah.
And we get to watch lots and lots of things happening.
So at least in our experience, the Linkerd control plane does take a little bit of time to fully come up as healthy and synced. It will come up as that, but it just takes a bit of time.
We hope it'll come up anyway. It says progressing. Oh yeah, I guess these pods aren't quite ready yet, which is known. Linkerd destination. I would really love to know why Linkerd destination always takes. It basically takes just long enough for me to start worrying about whether it's really going to come up. It's really lovely that way. Hey, there we go. It came up nice. Good. And now we have nice greenness all over this, which is great.
Yeah, green is good.
Mate is pointing out. Oh yeah, Mate is pointing out. Yes, the question about managing Linkerd with Argo CD in a multi-cluster Linkerd mesh, and yes, there is not currently a guide for that, and so we will have to. We shall have to scheme and put one together.
Yeah.
Yeah, which will be actually pretty fascinating. I'm kind of looking forward to that. All right, so when you do an Argo CD app create, then it's actually creating these application resources for you. And it was kind of fascinating to look at this and realize just how much of it is status. This is the part that's particularly, which is this? This is Linkerd CRDs, which is pretty much just saying, hey, the name is Linkerd CRDs. I guess they all have to go in the Argo CD namespace. Is that the way that works?
I'm not sure if that's a full requirement, but
at least a convention.
Yeah.
This is saying that Linkerd CRDs will live in the Linkerd namespace, and they will come from a Helm chart named Linkerd CRDs from the stable Linkerd Helm repo, and we're looking for chart version 1.8.0, which corresponds to Linkerd 2.14, stable 2.14.0, and we are clearly going to have to be publishing the mapping of versions there. Okay. So one of the things that I thought was interesting about this one was that when you do the Argo CD app create, then it actually writes this resource for you. And you could then go take that resource off of your cluster, commit it into Git as the start of the full GitOps experience. And then I decided to try doing that for Emissary, which I'm probably doing wrong, honestly. But this is the application that I came up with, which is actually doing two different sources. Emissary's CRDs don't have a Helm chart, so I just pulled the YAML down and stuck it into GitHub, and then used the Helm chart for the main thing, and hopefully that will work.
Yeah, you can have multiple sources.
And if we flip back over here, we do see the Emissary application. We also see that it's out of sync. So this time I'm going to sync it from the UI. And while that is syncing, Corey asks, do those tiles represent the Helm deployments? The tiles represent Argo CD applications, which I think usually, in many cases, will reflect Helm deployments, but aren't quite the same thing. My Emissary sync says it's failed. I'm going to just resync it and pretend that didn't happen. Question for Regina, definitely. Is it possible to put different versions of the application in separate namespaces when setting up blue-green and canary deployments with Linkerd and Argo CD? I have no idea.
Versions. I think so, yeah.
That's kind of cool. Okay. From that guy, how would you set up or view the Linkerd Viz dashboard with this setup? We don't have Viz installed right now. It would not be hard to use you know what? Actually, I'm going to go and bug Mate on that one for a second, because I don't remember off the top of my head if Viz has a Helm chart itself or if we have to do something slightly differently there. So, Mate, if you're listening, I would love to see something in Slack about how Linkerd Viz interacts with the Helm charts. But how you would access Linkerd Viz after you have it is, the same way you would without Argo. The question is, how do we use Argo to go ahead and put Viz in? Viz is a Linkerd extension, and so there's a separate namespace that has some separate stuff in it. And I typically just use the Linkerd Viz install command, but I'm pretty sure there's a Helm chart underneath that we can just go and associate with Argo. Yeah, it has its own Helm chart, so we would just do pretty much what we did for Linkerd itself, but we'd use the Linkerd Viz Helm chart, and we would tell it to use the Linkerd Viz namespace, and we'd be good to go. Bunchu's workbench. How can I visualize all Kubernetes cluster in one Linkerd Viz? What you want is Buoyant Cloud. And Mate, if you can put a link to Cloud in a thread there, I would appreciate it, because I do not have one to hand. Okay. Backing up here for a moment.
Do you want to just try syncing that again?
I am going to ignore this, because this is saying a couple of cluster roles are out of sync, and I'm pretty sure everything is working. So I'm just going to pretend that didn't happen and chalk it up to, yeah, I probably didn't quite define that application correctly.
Yeah. And every once in a while, I do notice that the Linkerd control plane will go out of sync, but it'll go back in sync. I don't know why.
I suspect what's going on there is you might be seeing Linkerd rotating a certificate or something along those lines.
Probably, yeah.
So smooth Buoyant Cloud plug, says Dan. Well, dude, I work for Buoyant. What do you expect? Okay, so one of the things that we talked about earlier was that Argo can watch the cluster and then watch the Git repo and kind of keep things in sync there. So we are going to demonstrate that by cruelly deleting a CRD, which I'm picking on HTTP routes, because HTTP routes, we're not using that one right now. I'm not completely sure about the other ones, because I don't remember what things get created by default, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just going to delete the HTTP route CRDs, and then we'll go back to the dashboard. And actually, the control plane is already saying it's out of sync, which is kind of nice.
Probably because of the certs. If you refresh it, it'll really be out of sync. Yeah, it's out of sync.
Out of sync. Excellent. And yeah. We see some secrets there out of sync. And I'm expecting somewhere in here I'm going to see a missing CRD. Oh, no, wait. This is the control plane. I'm looking at the wrong one. Okay, so yes, the control plane is out of sync. Yeah, there we go.
Sorry,
the control
about that.
plane is out of sync because the control plane is rotating secrets and doing stuff like that. And we're really going to have to go figure that out. But we can see that HTTP routes are missing, as they should be, because I just deleted them. And if I sync this again,
because it's going back to that repo that you gave it before, it knows what the source of truth is. So if you just hit resync, then it pulls it back in.
Right. And yeah, I already hit the sync button. Whatever. I got ahead of my own demo there. Sigh. But if we come back, we can see, hey, look, HTTP routes are here again. And we can also see that they are newer. So we can see that they actually came back, which is kind of cool. Lachlan, Argo doesn't actually seem to install the Helm release itself. If you were to migrate an existing cluster to using Argo, is there a nice way to handle adopting existing Helm releases?
Yeah, there's a more automated way to do it. We're just not doing it in this demo, but you can just have it all say like a list of things to do, like do this Helm repo add, Helm app create, whatever.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Sorry, I just got completely sidetracked because I made the horrible mistake of reading a comment that popped up on Slack that wasn't actually a question for the demo. I'm terribly sorry, everyone. So we are going to install the Faces demo with Argo CD, and for Faces does not have a Helm chart, so we're going to do this from manifests in GitHub. Specifically, all the manifests live here in the color route, or in the Faces directory of our Helm chart. There are a bunch of files in there. I'm not actually going to go over all of them. Just look, there's a bunch of files for Faces. Isn't that awesome? The control plane Argo CD application should really include ignores for the secrets that are taking us out of sync. That is an excellent point.
Yeah. So in the next one, in the next
We'll do that.
demo, the real world one, we'll do that. Thanks for the pointer.
This is all pretty much the same thing that we saw for some of these other ads, but we are using a GitHub repo, and that is my fork of Regina's repo here. And we're explicitly telling it to look in the Faces path within that repo. So if we do that, we'll also show off that you can do Argo CD app get, and it will go through and tell you lots and lots of stuff, including all of the resources that are going to be done for this particular application. Kind of cool. And we should be able to see it in the dashboard. If I go back to the applications pane, I now have the Faces app here, which is kind of cool. And let's go ahead and sync that up. Is there a way to tell sync to be quieter? It just occurred to me to wonder.
That. I'm not sure about that. To tell it to.
I mean, I'm sure I could redirect it to dev null, but that seems kind of excessive.
Yeah, I think some people do some stuff with that. Like,
oh dear.
There is a way.
Why did my sync fail?
Can you go back?
To what?
To the UI?
Oh, yeah. Duh. Sorry. I was looking at the UI and then it didn't do me again.
Can you retry it really quick?
Yeah. This is how you know we're doing this live, folks.
Okay. I don't know why it failed.
I got nothing.
Sometimes if Argo CD fails or something, that I just do it another time, make sure it's the same. Sometimes things aren't, I don't know.
Sane.
Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, this is how you know, everybody watching, this is how you know both that we're doing this demo live on a real cluster, and how you know that I personally am not an Argo CD expert. I get the funny feeling by the next time we do this, I might be more of an Argo CD expert.
Yeah.
Okay, so rollout status, just to make sure Faces is up and running. It is. We can check the pods. We see that they each have 2 containers. One of them is the actual Faces workload. One of them is Linkerd. So we know Linkerd is doing the right thing. And we should be able to flip over and see the Faces application, which we can see running. With one interesting caveat, which is that those backgrounds should not be gray. They should be green. And that kind of makes me wonder what's up, because I know that there's an HTTP route that should be dealing with that. Whenever you're wondering if stuff is up with an HTTP route, the first thing you do is go to the bottom and look at the statuses. And in fact, on this one, we can see this status here saying that it was not able to resolve the backend refs because the backend was not found. And if we look up a little bit, we can see the typo, which I surely did not make intentionally for purposes of this demo, but the color backend has 2 R's instead of 1 R.
Oh no, darn.
Oh no.
We're gonna have to show how to fix
Oh no,
it.
we'll have to show Argo fixing this. So we have a corrected one in a different directory here in the repo, and we can look and see that, yes, indeed, this time the backend ref has only one R as it should. We can copy that over. Git correctly shows us that we have changed exactly one thing there in the faces directory.
Yeah, so this is that like git diff part, and you could also see that in the UI.
Can I see it right now in the UI, or do I have to actually push it, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we can commit that and then push it. And I'm not going to resync the app here yet. I am going to go back to the UI to show off what Regina was talking about.
So if you go and refresh it.
Refresh this, and now it says out of sync, which is good.
So go to the application. Let me put the mouse
over there.
And you should
color out as yellow.
Yeah, so click on that. And diff. And there it is.
Yep. We also see, so we see the name changing, which is what we wanted. We also see that this matches stanza is not present. This is, what am I looking at? This is the live on the left and the desired on the right. So we can see that my desired manifest does not have the matches stanza. That's actually a gateway API weirdness. This one over here is the default matches stanza for a gateway API HTTP route that doesn't include a matches stanza. And due to the magic of Kubernetes, when you fetch a route that doesn't otherwise have a stanza, you're going to see that. So, yeah. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and say sync. And now there is no diff. That's probably a good sign.
Yep.
Synced, sync okay. And if I back out to applications, everything is healthy and synced.
Nice.
Now we can go back over here. I'm going to rerun the sync and it's going to do pretty much nothing. Again, kind of getting ahead of the demo, but there we go. It's still healthy and synced. Excellent. You can run sync as often as you want. It's not supposed to change things once it's synced, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, you can have the sync be manual or an automatic sync. And you can also change the time. Like the default is 3 minutes for an automated sync, but you can change
just about
whatever you want. Yeah.
But at this point, we have all of these set up as manual. And so we could just sit here forever and it would stay out of sync, right?
Yes.
Okay. Right. All right. Any other questions so far? Let's see. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Okay. So far, so good. Or so far, everybody's completely confused and don't even know how to ask questions. So we'll hope that so far, so good. Now let's go ahead and do some rollouts.
Yeah, so with this, we're again creating an Argo Rollouts namespace and installing the CRDs.
So far, so good. I'm not going to show the RBAC that we're applying here, but we are applying some RBAC so that Argo Rollouts can go and mess with HTTP routes. Honestly, we're probably being a little too broad there because I think we're allowing Argo Rollouts to do absolutely anything it wants to with HTTP routes.
Yeah.
But, you know, whatever. Again, it's a demo.
Another note for the future.
Yeah.
Well.
And then we do have to do this config map, which the config map was kind of fascinating. I guess the way this works is that Argo Rollouts supports lots and lots of different ways to do traffic management. Are they all plugins, or is Gateway API special?
I think they're all plugins.
Yeah. Okay. That was kind of the impression I got. But here we are going through and telling it that, yeah, you can use Gateway API. Here's the plugin. And this was a very entertaining bit of catch-22 when I set this up the first time. So we had to install rollouts itself so that we had the service accounts available that the RBAC wanted to use, but then we had to put in the config map and the RBAC after that. And so now we need to go and restart everything in the rollouts. Thankfully, this is fast. Now watch, it's going to take a long time just because I said it was fast. Hey, there we go. Okay, that's cool. It was still fast. So I found out that you can do this. I don't know if this is actually really supported. What we have here is we had the Faces directory where we told Argo, hey, the Faces app should use the stuff in this Faces directory. And you can actually edit the path in the application resource, which I'm going to use here to swap over from the one that isn't using rollouts to the one that is using rollouts. Is this, supported, or is this just something that happens to work?
I mean, I use it when I'm playing around with stuff a lot, but it's not really like the GitOps way of doing stuff. You're supposed to check it into Git, but It's fine.
I mean, this is checked into Git. It's just, I should have the application.
Oh, you're editing. Okay, not the actual. Okay, then yes.
Yeah. All right. So we now see that these new resources are missing, and there's this color thing that's going to be deleted, and the rollout is not there. Yeah. So we will come back over here and synchronize this. I also found that I needed -- prune so that it would actually throw away the old color deployment, which is being replaced by the color rollout. Did I say that right? Argo rollouts, the objects are kind of parallel to deployments, I guess is the right way to put that.
Yeah, rollouts are pretty much identical to deployments.
I'm going to flip back over here, and we can see that this is progressing, and now it's healthy, which is awesome. Okay, and so now we should be able to see what the color rollout looks like. Right, and we can also, while we're at it, we can observe that the Faces GUI is still running. Always a good sign.
Yeah.
Okay. So that Faces thing down in the corner there is actually, I just took the browser window and I'm showing a chunk of it on top of my terminal window. That is the same one that's really running in a real browser over on a different chunk of my screen. So to make a rollout start happening, we just change the color rollout resource. And in this particular case, I'm going to change to the color. You know what? Let's do orange, since that's supposed to be better for maximum color blindness support. So there, what we're seeing is, once again, we're doing this live, and you just got to watch one of my workloads crash.
Oh no!
It'll be back. It should be back shortly.
Okay.
If it's not back shortly, then maybe I'll delete the deployment and let Argo put it back for me. Yeah, it should be back shortly. Once again, how we're doing this live. There we go.
There it is.
Okay. And you can also see that we are, in fact, getting some orange faces. You can see up here that we should be getting about 30% orange faces. I feel like we might be seeing a little more than that, but whatever. 30% of 16 is on the order of 5 or 6. So yeah, sure, looks good. You'll also note that it says we are paused. And the reason for that is that this is the way, you remember we talked about how you could define the weighting and the steps and all of that. This first one here, we did not set a duration. And that turns out to mean wait until we explicitly say to go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which presumably is just so I mean, I guess in the real world, you'd be unlikely to use a starting step of 30, right? You'd probably
Yeah,
start
it's
at
a
like
little
1 or 2,
high.
maybe start at 1 or 2 and, check a few
Yeah.
things, make sure you're not getting errors on your new deployment. But now that we have seen that we are in fact getting orange backgrounds and things look good, so we can go ahead and explicitly promote that with Argo Rollouts promote. Oh yeah, one other thing I ran across that was interesting was the namespace for Argo Rollouts seems to have to go like right after this rollouts word, which I don't fully understand, but whatever. Oh yeah, cursing faces, because the smiley workload just crashed too.
Oh no.
Faces is not a high quality app, let's face it. But now we can see that it's up on step 3 of 8 at 40%, and in another few seconds it should step to 60.
Yeah.
This is a kind of an interesting thing where for a little bit there we were getting pretty much all orange. One thing that I noticed here is that if the original one crashes in the middle, then it will divert all the traffic to the newer one, which I think is usually a feature, but I want to think a little bit more about what exactly is going on there. And now we have all orange, and in another second or so, I think it's going to start scaling down I think shortly we should see this scale down the older version, right?
Should.
Come on, anytime. But you can see that it already switched. The one that we were previously watching that was saying canary and all that is now saying stable. Yeah, and there we go. Scaled down. So, cool. We can stop that. There's also this rollouts UI, which I have not tried before, so this should be interesting.
It's the last minute change I added. I'm a big fan of using UIs. I'm more of a visual person, so
well, let's see.
So you're right in the default namespace for this, so just change your namespace up top. Or you could run that command from the namespace you're already in, but that's just easier to change it in the UI, in my opinion. Yeah, so this is your rollout that's in your namespace. So if you click on that,
it doesn't seem to be saying very much.
Oh, maybe because it's already completed.
Well, we can do another rollout then.
Yeah, you could just see it from the UI. Maybe if you restart it.
So I'm going to change this from orange to purple. We're originally going to do. Now, if I come over here, we should. Okay, there we go. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but oh no, now I'm sure what happened. My color workload crashed.
Oh, yeah. So it went all to the V2.
Yeah.
Is it, I don't know what's happening in your terminal. Is it going?
One second. What's happening is that I'm scrolling back in my terminal to remember exactly what the command is.
Ah, okay.
Ah, there we go. Okay, so it is going. It's holding at step 1. Oh, you know what? I think I might know what's going on here. What was the command for the rollout dashboard again?
It is, let's see. Oh,
Argo Rollouts dashboard, right?
I don't have. Yes, kubectl Argo Rollouts dashboard.
All right. Let's try reloading that. I think what was going on was that I suspended my original shell. And I think I ended up suspending the rollouts dashboard command.
Yeah.
So I just ran the rollouts dashboard command. I killed the old one, killed the one that was suspended, ran a new one in another window. Okay. Yeah, Unix. Unix is a thing, right?
Cool.
This
Okay.
looks ever so much better.
Yes.
All right. So
Cool.
what sorts of cool things can we do from the UI then? Like, can I promote it from here? Oh, look, there's a promote button. So first off,
you could abort it if you wanted. But
yeah, but let's
I haven't used that before.
Well, nothing is working there anyway. But if I promote it, yes, I'm sure.
So now
and now
it's
it
going.
goes
You can
through
see
and
the
we get to
steps all
watch it stepping
visually.
along.
Yeah.
Okay, that's kind of cool. I mean, yeah.
And you actually could also in the containers box edit that and change the container right there. But
so I could like set this one. I could change that to like 1 second or something like that.
Yeah,
it's kind of cool. I assume I can't edit the one that it. Well, whatever. Now it's almost done. And yeah, it still hasn't recovered because one of my deployments is now in connected back off. It's there are things that are very entertaining about working with applications that are kind of deliberately not great to show off resilience, but I should really make that particular one better. But okay, so revision 3 is now stable. That's pretty cool. I suppose I could try a rollback, but I think that we've probably messed with enough stuff for now. Are there any other questions then? Anything else that comes to your mind for things you think would be kind of cool? Okay.
Great.
So I'm going to put this up once more. Everybody can see this as well, but it might be a little bit easier to read here. That is the path for the repo that you can clone and go through all of this stuff. Somebody is typing in the workshops channel, so we can give a second to see what else is coming up. Alvaro has a question from Malaga about the question there is Argo Rollouts compatible with Linkerd circuit breaking? And that is actually a really good question. I think we're going to have to test that, actually. That should be entertaining. The question there is basically, if you're doing a rollout and then you end up with circuit breaking, opening the circuit because your shiny new canary is just horribly broken, then will Argo know that it should decide that that has failed? And I would like to hope so. If Argo Rollout is handling all the meshed services, what happens if Argo Rollout goes down? Wouldn't that crash all the services? I can imagine it would probably just stall the progression.
Yeah, I think it would just stalls.
Yeah.
I don't think it would crash.
What Argo Rollouts is really doing is changing the weight of an HTTP, changing the weights of the backend refs within an HTTP route resource. And then Linkerd is the one that's actually routing traffic around. So if rollouts crashes, the weights will no longer get updated and everything would just stall, but routing should still just fine.
Yeah. You just shouldn't be able to like promote roll back or do any updates.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose we could try that, but we've already been here for an hour and 15 minutes, so I think that might be a good one to do later. Is this workshop covering the metrics-based auto rollback use case you mentioned at the start? I'm pretty sure all the rollouts that we were doing just now were, in fact, relying on the metrics.
Yeah.
And if we had broken any of them, I think it would have rolled back. But we had enough things go wrong without trying to deliberately cause that. So, anything else? Anything you wanted to add while we wait to see, Regina, while we wait to see if anybody on Slack or on chat has something else to add?
No, not at the minute. I just hope that people try out Argo CD if you haven't already. It's a really cool tool. I love it.
That's good. I'm glad that you love it if you're a maintainer.
Yeah. Right.
It would be kind of sad to be a maintainer on something that you think is terrible.
Yeah. And the Argo community is located on CNCF Slack channel. So if you're on that already, we're all there. So it's a great place to go ask questions.
Is there, I assume there are channels for Argo?
Yeah, there's a bunch of Argo channels for each project and a bunch of stuff.
Dan says his understanding is that default rollouts are kind of dumb and just wait the amount of time. We use them and they're not metrics based as far as I know. Anything you could speak to there, Regina?
I'm not sure about that. I think you're right. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not a rollouts maintainer. I'm more Argo CD, but.
All right, so I guess we're going to have to get back to that one and and demo that. Demo that one formally for the next time as well. Pip says Argo CD 2.8.5 was just released. We are using 2.8.4, so we're clearly behind the time.
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations to the Argo folks. Yeah. 2.9 is expected next week. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll have to see if there's anything funky and new.
Yep. There's some cool stuff in 2.9.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anything that you think is particularly worth calling out?
I remember there's not off the top of my head, but
okay.
There's a lot of stuff going into that.
Good enough. All right. While we wait for anybody else, that's how to reach us if you have further questions. Or, of course, you can always find, actually, you can find me on both the CNCF Slack and the Linkerd Slack. And at this point, I think that's true of Regina as well. And I believe that is it for this one. So, many thanks, Regina, for your help on all of this one, especially if you could end the demo. That made life a lot easier on my part.
No worries.
Yeah. And yeah, I think we'll be doing more with Argo in the future. So thanks to everybody for joining in, and we will see y'all next time.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks much.